Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take a look.
Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that. I think if you click the up arrow.
Ah, yes, there we go. Excellent. Sorry about that. My assistant was trying to help me remove that filter there. We need to discuss the legislative branch. So the question is, how does lawmaking actually happen? I know you guys are very aware that the law has to pass the House, and then it has to pass the Senate, or vice versa. Then it goes to the president, and he either signs it or he vetoes it. And then if he vetoes it, it goes back to Congress, and then if they override the veto, it passes, and then it's up to the judicial branch if it's constitutional or not. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. So let's go a little bit more in depth. So here's how the lawmaking process happens. So to start the lawmaking process, a member of the House or the Senate writes a bill, and then they introduce it to the chamber. The leader of the chamber then sends the bill to committee. So it's not like a law, or excuse me, it's not just like a bill gets written and then everybody just immediately votes on it. Like I said, it's a little bit more complicated than that. The bill gets sent to committee first. And your definition of committee is going to be at the bottom of the slide. So committees are made up of members of that chamber, so either the House or the Senate, who have expertise in a certain field. So committees are senators, or they are representatives who, generally speaking, before they became a representative or a senator, had expertise in a given field. Like, for example, a farmer who then becomes a congressperson would probably be on the agriculture committee because they know a lot about agriculture. So any bills that have to do with agriculture would get sent to the agriculture committee. And then those guys would figure out what to do with that bill. So committees debate about and then revise a bill based on their expertise so that the bill actually works. These guys know what they're talking about more so than the rest of Congress. So it goes to them first, because if they think it's a stupid idea, then it's probably a stupid idea. Now, just for the record, if there's not a committee that actually exists on the topic, congressional leaders will put together what is called a select committee. Select committees are basically just like non-permanent committees. So they exist on a temporary basis to deal with an unusual problem. Like, for example, a very famous one would be the Watergate Committee. So hopefully you learned in AP US history about the Watergate scandal. That was when, at the time, President Nixon basically got caught spying on his opponent during the presidential election, even though he was definitely going to win anyway. And then he ended up resigning before he could be impeached and removed. There was a committee that was formed to investigate that issue, to deal with any laws that might be passed in its aftermath, limiting the ability of a candidate to get information from their opponents. So the Watergate Committee would have been a select committee that was formed simply to deal with an unusual problem. I don't honestly know off the top of my head if we have one on COVID-19, but I would imagine that we do. And I would assume it would go away after COVID-19 hopefully goes away at some point. So basically, when a committee gets a bill, they do one of two things. They either throw the bill out or they approve the bill. More likely than not, they're going to throw the bill out. Like a vast majority of bills die in committee, more than anywhere else. They're going to die here at the very first step. But if the committee votes and a majority of the committee thinks that the bill is a good idea, then the bill will proceed. So if they decide to approve the bill, they can make changes. So let's say they're like, okay, this is a good idea, but since we're experts, we know that this thing should probably be changed, and then it'll be great. So those guys, if they think it's a good idea, they'll make a few changes and then they'll send it on to the next step. Committees are super important in the House, and I should have capitalized House, my bad. They're super important in the House because the House has 435 members. Therefore, there's a lot of ideas in the House. There's a lot of people who need to prove that they are in Washington, D.C. for a reason so they can get reelected. So they need to pass a bill. Whatever the case may be, committees are extra important in the House. That's something you need to know for your AP test. So once the committee approves a bill, it'll get sent to the entire chamber to vote on it. So if it was a House committee, it would get sent to the entire House. If it was a Senate committee, it would get sent to the entire Senate. Now, to pass the bill on to the next phase, the whole chamber votes, and they need a majority, meaning more than half of its members to approve the bill. And if that's the case, it goes on to the next step. The other chamber, the next step is, right? The other chamber then goes through the exact same process. The entire chamber votes on the bill, and almost always there's going to be some differences. So the House committee and then the full House would maybe have a bill in its final form that looks different than the Senate committee and then the full Senate, because those guys are going to make changes along the way, and almost always the bill looks a little bit differently. So instead of if there are differences, honestly, it's more like when there are differences. What's called the conference committee would then debate the differences, and they would agree on a final version. So the definition of a conference committee is a committee of people from the House and from the Senate who would debate over the differences in a bill to come up with a final version. I apologize that I did not put the actual definition in here, but that is the definition. So once the conference committee does its thing, the two chambers vote one last time on the version of the bill the conference committee created. If the House and the Senate both approve the bill, it is then sent to the president. And the president, as you know, would sign the bill and it becomes law. The court's still got to approve it. Or the president could veto the bill, it goes back to Congress, yada, yada, yada. You know that part, so I'm not going to belabor the point. You've already got enough stuff on your plate as is right now. Now, I will say this, and I feel like I've just kind of gleaned this through our conversations in Zoom sessions and things like that. I don't know how well I explained judicial review at the beginning. I don't know exactly where I went wrong, but it seems to me like the general sentiment amongst you guys is like, you're under the impression that judicial review is automatic every time a law is passed. And that totally could be me. That could be on me. But judicial review is not immediate. So once the president signs a bill, it is law right away. Judicial review happens if the law is challenged in court. So someone actually has to say, this law is either illegal or I am personally, injured. It's like, raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by Regina George, and then someone's like, I did, and then lawsuit happens. And it works its way up through the court system that way. Not all of the laws are challenged. So there's a lot of laws that don't have any judicial review on the books at this time. So here's a graphic for you guys on the lawmaking process. I know there's a lot of arrows and a lot of boxes. That's because the lawmaking process is kind of complicated. So pick one of these arrows and you're going to start there and just work your way through. So it's going to start with someone writing a bill. It's going to go to the committee. The whole chamber is going to vote. Then it's going to go to the other side, who's going to do the same thing. Then after you've got two different versions of the bill, it's going to get sent to the conference committee, who then sends it back to the whole chambers. If both chambers agree, it goes to the president. The president can either sign it or not. That is the lawmaking process. The committees are relevant to your AP test. So I just wanted to take some time to dedicate going over them because I don't think we've gone over them in a ton of detail yet. I know we went over them in the summer, but it's been a minute. Like we've had a whole year of pandemic since we last talked about this, and a year in pandemic adjusted terms is like 10 years. So just wanted to revisit this with you guys. Hopefully that is helpful. And then in the next video, it's going to be longer than this one, and we will discuss the actual nuts and bolts of the legislative branch. This is going to be where a ton of your terms are going to come from. So definitely have a coffee break real quick. Get some caffeine or something in your system, because these next couple pieces here are going to be chocked full of vocab terms. So I will catch you guys in a minute. I will not have a cat filter on anymore since I have figured out how to turn that off. See you later.